there's so much, anxiety among the rank and file of our party. I've listened to the national chairman of our party, the Honorable Johnson Asiedu Nketia, and he's made the point that as far as he is concerned, as the national chairman of the party, the Saturday conference or congress will definitely take place for us to elect our respective parliamentary candidates for the 2024 election, as well as the flag bearer for the same election. I'm also aware that all preparations towards the election are underway. I'm aware that the materials for the election have already been dispatched last week to the EC. The EC is supposed to do onward distribution to the various regions today for further transmission to the constituencies. So as far as I'm concerned, and with the little that I know, the Saturday Congress and parliamentary primaries across the length and breadth of this country are underway. I have also seen on social media the rate of summons, the application for injunction that had been filed by Dr. Kwabena Duffour, one of the aspirants. And I need to say that at this point, it stands as an application yet to be moved. But when I looked what I saw on social media, I realized that the date fixed for the hearing is 15th. That's next Monday. Which is next Monday. But as you're aware, the primaries are supposed to take place on Saturday. 13th. Now, like within lawyers, there are two schools of thoughts on this issue. What's the legal effect of a pending injunction application? Does it automatically operate as an injunction? There are some who say yes, there are some who say no. And so, but whatever it is, I am convinced that the lawyers associated with the party will take a position on this matter ASAP, and I'm sure by close of day today, whatever strategies that are available to them will be made public.
Is this one of the situations that require an application for abridgment of time on the basis that the motion itself will be moved 48 hours after the intended event? And of course, when it comes to deciding or determining who loses most, who loses out most.
The balance of convenience and all of those. I mean, so that principally goes into the substantive matter. And like you rightly pointed out, the opportunity to ask the court to abridge time are all matters that are in the rules of court. But some of these things are prayers that you need to pray to a court. I strongly believe that some of these matters will be on the table once the legal committee meets. I'm aware that the General Secretary was served very late yesterday, almost around 5 p.m. thereabouts. And I'm also aware of some discussions going on. Who knows, Randy? It may well even happen that Dr. Duffour will generously even decide to discontinue. Why not?
Generously?
Yes, or...
I see. But those are your words.
Yes, that's the
You're entitled to them.
Yeah, so he can even say that, for the interest of the NDC, I want to discontinue this matter so that we'll come home and see the best way. Because you see, even a little glance through...
So what's the basis?
Yes, so that's where I'm going. So a little glance through the rate of summons and the injunction application, you note that the concern really is about the register for the purpose of the election. And Randy, if you look, prior to these primaries, the Functional Executive Committee of the party met and approved what we usually call the guidelines for the conduct of both parliamentary and presidential election. At that meeting, they also approved even the timetable, day for picking of nomination, day of vetting, day of election, among other things. Those things are done publicly and published. Now, it's instructive to note that the NDC since 1992 has never conducted internal election with photo albums. So
let me just read excerpts of an interview that the General Secretary granted. And this was not in response to the court suit, because at the time he granted this interview, he had not been served. No. Now, quote, he says, I heard of people complaining about not getting access to the delegate list. But after the vetting, we gave everyone a delegate list. So all of them have a delegate list. So if anybody claims not to have a delegate list, that is not true. He further dismissed any suggestions of postponing the election due to grievances related to a photo album of delegates. Quote, for these NDC presidential and parliamentary primaries, people have raised issues about it, and I need to respond to them. But first of all, I want to assure all Ghanaians and NDC members that the elections will be held on Saturday, May 13, 2023. As I speak, there's nothing that restricts the elections, so all candidates should prepare for the elections. Like I said, this interview was granted before we were told it was served.
Yes, so
he says nobody can tell us that the photo album that we are doing, which is not even part of the guidelines, he hasn't received them, so because of it, we should postpone the elections. You can say such things, but because there's no basis to it, we'll also just listen.
Yes. Randy, you say, so I possibly want to take viewers through the processes. You see, in our party, what we do is that we have decided that our branches become coterminous with the Electoral Commission polling stations. So that constitutes our branch. And per the workings of our party, we elect 999 people in each of the branches. Now, these 999 people in each of the branches, depending on the number of branches in a constituency, constitutes the kingmakers, the delegates, for the purposes of electing our constituency executives. Now, once constituency executives are elected, they now form part of the entire kingmakers of that particular constituency. So if we want to elect our regional executive, those set of persons within that constituency, depending on the number of constituencies in that region, now constitute the delegates for that particular regional election. Now, once you move from there, you come to national. For the purposes of our national elections, we have certain category of persons who vote, formal appointees. Maybe under a previous NDC administration, you were a minister, you were a DC, you are entitled to come and vote in our congresses. Then you have a situation where we have overseas branches, the diaspora branches. They also send representatives for the purposes of coming to vote. So you notice in the interview that immediately after the vetting, each one of the aspirants, in the case of parliamentary, I, for instance, I was part of the vetting committee for Central Region. Immediately after we are done with the vetting, we'll give you a copy of the delegates list. So right from that time, you are aware of the people you'll be speaking to. Because this election is not open to every member of the NDC. It's limited. So once you are done, then it comes to the national. So if you notice, A.G. John Dramani Mahama will go for vetting. Immediately he's done, he's given a list of the delegates list. Then Duffour, Kwejo Bonsu, each one of them was given a list of the delegates. And so it cannot be said anywhere that as we speak, there's any presidential candidate in the NDC presidential primaries without the delegates list. And you see, Randy, what is even more curious is that the candidates have been campaigning. And because this one is not a campaign open to all members of the NDC, it's targeted. So you only go and meet the delegates.
So who have they been
exactly
meeting?
The point. So as we speak, the Honorable Kwejo Bonsu has been campaigning. Anytime he goes to any constituency, he goes specific. So you notice that in this campaign, they don't go to markets. They don't go to churches. They meet the delegates in a particular area. So you cannot, for instance, at this point say, the delegates, I don't know them. When you have been campaigning all this while, because you are supposed to be meeting delegates for the purposes of campaigning. In fact, the truth of the matter is, as at even yesterday, the Honorable Dr. Duffour was in Mankraso meeting delegates. You notice that ordinarily for any other campaign, the candidates would have been moving from chiefs, opinion leaders, mosque. But this one, because it's a very limited delegates, they go specific. And that's the difference with what is happening. So, like, that's why I've made the point that it may well be a certain misunderstanding. I have perused the entire guidelines for the presidential primaries. In fact, nowhere is the word photo album mentioned. Because from 1992 to today, we've never used photo albums. And you see, for us, because the delegates are just the 9999 branch executives, it is easier to just, when you go to say Crowell, you know this particular polling station. Like my point, Domeko Abenya, where my constituency, Domeko Abenya. If you go to say Perfect, you know the 999, you know their houses. In fact, if you're a party member, it's the easiest thing to. And you see, Randy, there's something interesting about this particular election. If you pick a place like Domeko Abenya, just for example, there are two people, candidates, the Elik Blame and Israel. These two is so competitive that they won't joke with the delegate list. I don't know if you get the point. Mm-hmm. It's so competitive that each one of them is monitoring the delegate list because it's a make or break. So even if there should be a complaint, it should be coming from there. Two, this delegate list is what we actually use in electing our constituency executives. You can't tell me that a constituency chairman who is going for re-election and there's an opponent who wants to take him out will not be interested in knowing the people who will vote for him. Two, the regional election, for instance, the last time we did ours in Tema, Ashimo, Chairman Adekuka, Michael. Look at these people. Each one of them is interested. And in fact, the delegate list is something they hold like their blood. Because anything can happen. None of these elections, respectfully, have we ever used photo album. I've perused the NDC constitution from beginning to end. The guidelines that were made or approved by FEC, nowhere. So when I heard this particular issue of photo album, I said, there may be a problem. Either a misapprehension, a certain confusion about how we conduct. But I can understand possibly where the confusion is coming from. You see, like our brothers in the MPP, they have photo albums. And so even as part of their electoral processes, there's what they call verification of the photo album, which is different from how we have run our party. So possibly somebody wants to import the MPP idea of photo album into the whole NDC conversation. With respectfully, I strongly believe that these are matters that we can easily work on. And I will pray that I've seen my senior brother Kukubo feature prominently in the conversation. I will plead with him. There were already internal conversation on this matter. They should trigger that process and ensure that there's a certain conclusion reached. Like I pointed out, it's my prayer that by 12 noon, by 1 p.m., I'll hear good news that upon reflection, Team Duffour have decided to discontinue the action. We in NDC, we don't do our matters in court. We sit at home, we sit under the umbrella, and then we will see what we do. And interestingly enough, Randy, on some of these issues, because we have a very vibrant Council of Elders, some of these issues, they even go to the Council of Elders and say, look, these are our concerns. Are there ways that we can? Then these matters are resolved. I think we have one of the most active Council of Elders as we speak. Their involvement in resolving disputes in the party have been so far phenomenal. The leadership of Alhaji Muhammad Idrisu relative to our Council of Elders in ensuring that matters arising from this party are resolved internally is something that we need to applaud them. And so I'm very confident that Team Duffour will go back to the drawing board and see how best we can. I've had word with my General Secretary. He has a very open door policy. Whatever concerns that you have, he's opened his office. Come, let's judge all. The National Chairman, General Mosquito, with his experience, has also opened his doors to receive complaints and how best we can. But what is not in doubt is the fact that all the presidential aspirants were given copies of the entire delegate list. What Team Duffour is asking for is an additional layer, which is a photo album, which has no feature whatsoever in the guidelines and the constitution the NDC had put together. And like I always make the point, a political party like the NDC, first of all, is an association. And so once you subscribe to it, you must be willing to comply with its rules. It's not like national constitution that operates more broadly. An MPP member, NDC constitution does not bother you. But the NDC, the 1992 constitution will have an effect on you. That's how associational constitutions operate until you subscribe. So once Dr. Duffour is a bona fide member of the party, I'll plead with him respectfully. Let's play by the rules of engagement as provided by the guidelines.